Hal Sparks radio program mega worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
All right, here we are. Now we're going live. A lot of switches to be thrown in the computer world, and I'm live, and here we are. Johnny Million, who is strangely surrounded by yarn and playthings in his background, which I find I find both joyous and frightening. So yes, and as I am wont to do, I am currently in a Twitter back and forth, because I posted a question this morning, because in light of the number of things that Biden is getting done and the number of things people are like, but he's not, and which include a lot of things he did not promise to do. That I have a real issue with. It's one thing that you can't take things Bernie and Elizabeth Warren promised, make the point that he didn't declare war on them as soon as he got in office, and go, then every promise they made is his promise. Then go, he's not fulfilling his promises that he did not make, that other candidates made, or that other congressional candidates made about what they plan to do, even though they are not, say they turned a blue district bluer in a very blue state, and they want... And their goal seems to be to fund, with a 50-50 Senate, say, spike the ball and go, we won this one. So, we should just shove everything through because that's the perception. Now, during the Trump administration, do you remember how they used to speak about Obama? Trump did this all the time, even in the run-up. He would talk about Obama like he was a god or a dictator to the Democratic Party, that we all viewed him as in a messianic way. Which was not true. He got more unfair criticism the entirety of his presidency from the left and from kind of general laissez-faire Democrats, simply because they didn't want to seem to be all in. They didn't want to seem to be maybe overcompensating, like they were defensive about the fact that they put a guy in office that happened to be black, and therefore they were like, I'm patting myself on the back for doing that, and yet I don't want to get out over my skis, or I am getting these criticisms from the right that says I view him as a messiah or a dictator, and therefore I'm going to be overly critical of him just to prove that I'm not. And so he caught a lot of flack he didn't deserve. He got less credit for the things he created and did while he was in office than other presidents, because we played, as Democrats, we played into the hands of Republicans. We were trying to be fair and and balanced, because those words used to mean something. And and now looking back, he's almost seen as like a wonderfully perfunctory Democratic candidate. Like there's Clinton, there's Obama, as if it wasn't a huge deal at the time, and that the ACA didn't save millions of people's lives and the lives of their children, and not just their lives, but their limbs as well. And so, one of the things that keeps coming up was there was this graphic that I posted that's been floating around. And I'll show it on the live stream right now. And I'm pretty sure you've seen it, Johnny Million. And it's the Biden accomplishments one. What he's done so far. Hold on. I see. Sorry. I'm shrinking the wrong page for these folks when I show it. And it's the what has Biden done thing. And it's an enormous list. It's just... and it's for a first-year presidency, it's incredibly dense. And now some of it, I'll be completely frank, is not minor. It's the normal functioning of government that we used to take for granted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the things that you're like, that's what your taxes should pay for. Like across the board in a bipartisan sense, there's this idea the government should at the very least do this as a point of function. And it goes back to doing that with Biden because Trump had completely ignored it. Or it had been put on the hook after 2008 and at a pause had been put on, one particular endeavor. And now the economy's coming back, so we can afford to make this investment going forward because there's a hole in the roof and we got to patch it.
And a pause was put on governing in general when Trump was in office.
Oh, yeah. Especially in the last few months of his presidency. After he lost the election, he was out. He moved into Nixon drunk screaming at paintings, Howard Hughes growing his fingernails and urinating in mason jars zone of his presidency. He just, So there's a ton of stuff in this that I'm just looking at the list. I'm just rolling through this. The largest permanent increase in SNAP benefits in U.S. history, raising the benefits by 27%. That permanent, by the way, permanent benefit and SNAP benefits for people who find themselves on the receiving end of life and need help. He didn't just get this emergency passed for now. This is permanent. It basically catches up with the cost of living and then slightly over. And oh my gosh, Wes, thank you. Just to show that I'm no better. Hal Vickery is the best and bright. Oh, that's really something. Wes, thank you.
Threw down to see what next week. He's crazy.
Hal Vickery, I'm sorry you won't be here because I will be doing the show from a cruise ship next week. Hal Vickery, thank you so much for that super chat because I'll be on a cruise. Oh, you're going to be on a cruise. Are you going to be on the one with me? That would be amazing.
Awesome.
If Hal Vickery shows up on the Monsters of Rock cruise, the world has shifted into a much better place. I'm just saying. And if he isn't, also true, because he should be able to go wherever he wants. They paid a 10% retention incentive to permanent federal firefighters and a $1,000 bonus to seasonal firefighters. They transitioned hundreds of federal firefighters from part-time to full-time and hired hundreds more. $28.6 billion in supplemental disaster relief approved for natural disasters, $8.7 in funding to increase lending to minority communities, released $1.3 billion in Puerto Rico disaster aid previously held up by the Trump administration, and removed restrictions on $8.2 billion in housing disaster aid. Because remember that whole weather event in Puerto Rico that happened? They haven't been dealing with that problem for a while. I mean, just on and on and on. Great stuff. Meanwhile, the cancel student debt crowd doesn't understand why they're not gaining more ground. And so I was trying to express something on Twitter this morning as to, can anyone in the cancel student debt crowd explain to me why the taxpayer should pay for a hedge fund accountant's $250,000 finance degree or a corporate lawyer's $300,000 Harvard law degree? Because these are not this does not remove the cost of university for people getting law degrees and finance degrees going forward. It's impossible. You can't do that. These are private universities. What it is wiping out the debt for an entire generation, regardless of what they went to school for, which gives the average person maybe a shave off of $119, $120, $180 a month for their student loans, depending on how much they got and how long they're paying it out, in the order of $40,000 over the course of 10 or 20 years, like a minor payment to them. But it dumps a free load of here's money that is now freed up to invest in the laps of people who have the highest, most expensive degrees. And as much as we hate on Joe Manchin in these parts, one of the holdups for BBB is that there's no means testing on the debt forgiveness that's in there. So it doesn't go to teachers and nurses and, EMTs and firefighters and people who are, getting a degree who are in a low wage job that, for, in a myriad of functional jobs in the economy throughout. It just zeroes it out depending on when you were born, effectively. So it's a birth-based Gen X, largely, erasure. Some millennials will get it and some millennials will not, depending on when their debt matures. And it won't lower the cost of university overall. As a matter of fact, it will largely drive it up. So the means testing aspect is, yeah, there's certain jobs that that society deems as necessary, and there are too few of them. And you want to incentivize those degrees, like teachers and nurses, for example, home health care, those kind of jobs where there just frankly are not enough people going into those jobs because they don't pay well enough. And you need to be licensed to do them because they require a certain amount of skill. So the means testing part of it would be to recognize that there's a reason to fund and lift up those areas while not just allowing Don Jr. to write off his Wharton Jr. degree at the same time. And many people go, well, tax the rich and it'll do that. Well, if you taxed Bezos, Gates, Elon Musk, and who else? Who's like the Wall family,
Colonel
Walmart
Sanders.
family. Yes, the Colonel Sanders and
and the Pope.
Everybody in the Pentaverate. If you tax them 100% this year, you took everything they had, it would pay for 1/16 of the debt that exists that you want wiped out, which means the remaining amount will come from middle-class taxpayers, many of whom have matured debt that will not get paid off. That's why you're not making any progress with this argument. That's why it keeps stalling. That's why it's not going forward, because it's an all or nothing approach, and it's denying the reality of the people you're asking to pay for it, because none of them are getting their debt wiped out. And none of their kids who are 15, 16, 17 years old right now will have their university paid for equally. They might have a cheaper loan in the future because of modifications you could make if you even bother, but it'll have nothing to do with the zeroed out cost at all. That's why the brakes keep getting ridden on this thing and why it doesn't pass. That's why. You don't have to like it, but that's exactly why. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, mega worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Don't worry, we'll get to like Ukraine and gas and jobs and craziness in a minute.